Good morning, friends, and welcome to the session on contract management. It's one of the interesting subjects. Whenever I go to any company, first thing I ask them, how do you manage a contract management? Normally the answer is, my job is to select the suppliers, make the negotiations, sign the contract, and later on, the file is put in the file around. So there's no separate activity of contract management around. And this you will see, I'm sure those who are listening, is very common in many of the companies around. But later on they find the specs, what we have designed was not correct, the delivery is failing, quality is not up to the mark. So you find a lot of potential risk around. To avoid those situations, I think the contract management becomes very crucial, particularly when the contract is of a long cycle and the contract is of a very complex nature and very high value. In those situations, the contract management becomes very important activities around. Now, let's start with what exactly we plan to cover today. The learning objective, what we kept for today's session is, first thing is to understand what is the contract. Because until we know what exactly is a contract, and then the contract management, the managing the contract. What are the plans? So if I have to develop the plans, and then how do I deal with changes? Every contract, I'm sure many of you must be knowing, and very normal you will find around, you have to change the quantity, you have to change the delivery time, you want early, you want later. All those changes happens around. The variations are there. And there could be potential risk also. The risk could be political, risk could be the levers, the risk could be financial, the risk could be many. Because the supplier of yours is also depending on someone. And it might be a global supplier, so there could be wide range of risk around. The next thing what we plan to cover is also to develop performance indicators to monitor the contract performance. You have defined the contract, but is it doing as per the plan? Is it doing as per the indicators? So you need to define the performance indicators. The performance indicators could be on price, the performance indicators could be on quality, the performance indicators could be on delivery, various aspects around. Then contract administration. I know this term I will try to clarify, because if I go back 25, 30 years back, people were not talking contract management. They used to say contract administration, which sounds very bureaucratic. So we will try to clarify what is contract management and what is contract administration. Administration to me is ensuring the compliance part. Okay, guys, these are the 20 lines. Are we complying with this? That's a sufficient. A very bureaucratic, focusing only on compliance. That's a contract administration. But you know, when the contract is a long cycle, high value, the currency is changing, bound to be claims around. You say, guys, we signed this contract at this time, but now the currency has weakened and become very heavy. The claim, disputes, those are there around. And at the end of the day, the contract has to be closed. So this is broadly, I think in the next 1 hour, we'll try to cover it. And after the presentation will be followed by a quick 4 quiz around, a very simple quiz, and we'll try to assess it. So broadly, when I look around for the session today, is to maximize the value. In short, I would say the financial and operation performance, minimize the risk, including compliance. Because compliance is also very important around. So that's what we are trying to do. So let's understand first what is a contract. I mean, obviously it's an agreement. Enforceable by law is a contract. If agreement is not enforceable, two friends say, guys, okay, we'll meet together, but that's only agreement, but this is not enforceable until those conditions of a contract, which we always say, there has to be an offer, there has to be an acceptance, there has to be consideration. Those are the key elements around. I mean, there are other elements, but there are key elements around to form a contract. So the contract is an agreement enforceable by law, while, I mean, if agreement is not enforceable, then agreement remains agreement. So this is what I would like to make the clarity around on this part. Now, there are different types of contract, which all of you are very conversant. Fundamentally, there are two types. One we call as a fixed price contract. Other one is called cost reimbursable contract. Okay guys, whatever you are doing around, this is the fixed cost I will pay, but this one, depending on the number of days, number of this, I'll reimburse you the cost around. I give to some organization to do R&D work for me. The guy is not able to define how much time, how many resources. He said, guys, okay, go ahead, do it. We'll reimburse it. But the combination of the two is called time and material. So the time is variable. Depending on the number of days the person is going to do the consultancy, multiplied by the unit rate, then the material cost is the one actually whatever the guy has spent. So it's a hybrid of the fixed and cost reimbursable. So the broadly, I know in some of the academic books you'll find all three are defined, but the way I look around, principally there are two types, the fixed price and the cost reimbursable. The third one is nothing but the hybrid type. It's a combination of fixed plus reimbursable. It's a combination, and some people use it for professional services, consulting, audit, when you hire them, or even the legal services, you pay them on time and material basis. So now we understood what is a contract, what types of contract we are making around. Now here also I wanted to say the same thing which I said in the beginning. Normally procurement functions, these guys, once a contract is awarded, I wash on my hand, my job is over, and put the file into the drawer. Only when we get the pressure, oh guys, this job was to be completed in 15th of November, or nothing has been done. Then you start calling the guy, what happened? But then sometimes it's too late. Now coming back to the managing a contract. Managing a contract means you're basically following and monitoring the implementation. There are different milestones. You're trying to follow each milestone by milestone. The first milestone could be training. Second milestone could be segmentation of data. The fourth could be interpreting the data. Fifth could be different. You're basically going with milestone by milestone. Now, through good contract management, you can avoid unexpected costs, delays, because you're keeping overall watching it, what is happening with each day by day, and delays on the poor quality. All those things are being looked into it. So the objective which stands behind the contract management is, so the whatever services obtained in the output specification ensure going affordability, value for money, and appropriate risk transfer. At the right time, you can transfer the risk around, you can mitigate the risk around, that's advantage around. Now, when we talk of contract management, again, depending on the complexity, depending on the nature of purchase around, depending on the type of relationship you want, whether you want an arm's length relationship, whether you want to be very good buddy with them, you want to be very close relationship, partner relationship. So depending on that also, the contract management approach will change. That's what you have to keep in mind. Now the next comes, why should I do contract management? Because this question comes, as I said to you, most of the procurement people say, once my job is done, this is for the supplier to ensure it. So we're still looking at the reality. The great procurement work can be underdone by weak contract. You've done a wonderful procurement, done a wonderful sourcing, selection, formed a beautiful contract, put down all the clauses of penalties. But if the contract management is poor, yes, you could lead into claims, you could lead into anything around, but your job is delayed at the end of the day. So the weak contract management can lead into those around. On the contrary, I find the next bullet is, I've done poor something on the procurement side, I missed out something, and then during the contract management, I come across, guys, I did a mistake in this, I can recover it, I can do it. So in one way, anything which you've done good on the procurement, if contract management is poor, you're going to suffer. But if you've done a poor procurement, no problem. But then during the contract management, you have learned it, you rectified it, you have basically saved the time. You have cut down the risk part around. Now the pain points which normally happens, first thing is the benefits of the contract, the purpose for which you contract, you raised around, you're not getting sufficient value for it, what you have planned. The second pain point could be the increasing expectation of stakeholders around. The third could be changing requirements over time. Your requirements are also changing. When you sign the contract, and the contract is for a year, but over the period of a year, things are changing. No side input to the contract. Then we say lack of poor specification, lack of actually basically specs and KPI. The performance indicators are missing around. There's also there, you have made the contract, but the KPIs are not spelled out. Specs are very generic. And then you find, guys, oh, standards are missing in this. The quality standard, I'm buying a medical equipment, medical device. I wrote down all the dimensions, wrote down everything around, but I forgot to write down that this should comply with standard like ISO 13458 around, 85 around. So this numbering I have forgotten around. People are just giving me poor qualities around. Poor supplier performance, internal cross communications, cross-team communications. Too many suppliers, I got too many suppliers. So contract becomes tricky. And then the skill is also one of the pain points. Because when you're doing the contract management, particularly which is a long cycle and a complex one, changes are bound to happen. And that means you have to resolve your issues as it goes through. So those skills, sometimes we are lacking around. So those are the pain points I would call in this contract management. Now, how do we form the contract management team? I mean, obviously for small contract, you're not going to form a big contract team. But for big, complex contracts, certainly you want to form a team. And this team should be cross-functional. So that means this cross-functional team is totally empowered to take the decision on the spot. They're not going back and forth with emails and the process is getting delayed. And then you need different type of relation. When you're taking the team, if the relationship is arm's length type, you need different type of people. If you're thinking of a cooperative relationship with the supplier, you need people who are good people manager. So that's where it goes on. Coming back to the skills of the contract managers, obviously any contract manager who's working on it has to be very good communicators. With the cross-functional team, communication with the suppliers, I think this is one of the top skill I would say is required. The next is relationship builder, the guy who can manage the relationship, interpersonal relationship, can move the things quicker, able to focus on issues, has a working knowledge on the technical issues. The guy is a respected, influential guy. The knowledge of risk management technique is knowledge, ability to see the big pictures, skilled in project management technique, and a good negotiator. So this is the way when I look for a big project of $40, $50 million, and then I say, guys, we want to hire some good contract manager. So we need, these are the skills one should have it. Now coming back to the plan part now. So what we are writing in the procurement, the contract management plan, gives a background to the contract, defines who's involved, provides a basis for contract management, and highlights the risk and the risk management. Sometimes people ask in a very simple, what is a contract? Then I normally define them that there are three parts in the chain of contracting. There's a pre-contract, contract, and post-award contract. Post-contract, you could call post-award stage around. So pre-award, award stage, and the post-award. Some people think contract management is nothing but the post-award stage, or you can say post-contract stage. This used to be the definition in the past. Guys, to me it is more like, if I want to give a simple analogy, the pre-contract is more like dating, and the contract is more like a marriage, and then managing the marriage is contract management. But if you look around, I mean, if you divide them into three parts, but the guy who's doing a contract management has not been involved in the contract formation stage, will have difficulty to really manage it. So we normally try to expand the role of the contract manager, guys. Don't stay in the firewall of managing a contract only after it has been signed. Get involved even during the stage of formation of a contract. So that's very important around. So that's how I would put it. Now the type of informations, if you're putting in the management plan, obviously the definitions of various issues, So like I said to you, what is contract administration? What is contract administration? The two are different terms. So one needs to come up with the right definitions around background information. And what is the supply strategy, contract management team, who are the members, supplier details, partnering informations, contract management scope around what is the scope of the contract, as detailed you can give it is much better. And if you can put down the milestone is much better. Key provision of the contracts. If I had to do the scheduling of this, and if I take the bottom-up approach, first thing you have to define what are the activities. What are the key milestones? Screen the activities and milestones. Prepare the activities milestone cards. Lay out this thing around, review. Draft the network flow chart. Then how things are going around, activity from A to Z, there might be different nodes on the way, and those nodes, how they are moving around. So this is what we try to schedule it. I'm sure you're all conversant with PERT systems, Gantt charts. You're also conversant with CPM critical path method. So those are the ones we try to use. So this is one of the PERT chart. You can say starting from this, ending at the last activity, M5. So you have a wide range of activities, milestones, M1, M2, M3, M4, M5. The critical path is the one which takes the longest time. If you look at the one, the bottom one, 4 weeks plus 2 weeks. The 4 weeks is from start to M3. Then M3 to M4 is 2 weeks. Then M4 to M5 is 4 weeks. If you add up, this is 10 weeks. While if I look at the upper ones, because I'm doing two parallelly, but in the real life, you may have many of these offshoots around. It's the most simple one. I've tried to draw it around. So in the upper one, you find when I do it from M1, M2, M5, the total week is 5 plus 1. So I have got extra space time around. So even if there's a delay in that path, my whole schedule time is not disturbed. But if there's a delay in the bottom path from start to M3 to M4, M5, any activity, if it gets delayed by even a day or week, it affects the whole thing. So in the upper path, I've got a slack, I've got a lag period around, but in the bottom ones, it's very critical. So that's what we call the critical path. Same thing you can put up in a simple Gantt chart, the bar charts, when it will start, when it will end. So each activity, there may be overlapping sometime, but the previous chart gives you much better clarity around where I've got the slack period around. So if this delay happens, what this could affect around. So based on this, you make the schedule and finalize the schedule, but keep in mind, nothing is static. It goes on changing for many reasons around. So you need to update on a regular basis. Then you obviously have to make a contract budget as well. When different milestones comes up, when it is due, when the payment is due. So all those detail has to be spelled out so that your finance people are ready to make the process the payment around. Next comes the communicating the priority, which I said in the beginning also. This is one of the top, skilled requirement of a good contract management. So you need to be aware of the relative priorities of the time, cost, and quality. So then you have to decide what is your priorities around. Is the time important to you? Is the cost important to you, or quality important to you? If you feel time is not important, but the cost is important, you don't mind having a little extra time, but the cost is the one you can't compromise. This is the most popular, I think you'll see in most of the training programs, we use it. We call it the supply positioning model, because your contract management will depend on this. So we normally expect every company to do their spend part, convert the spend into 4 boxes based on the impact, based on the risk and expenditure. So when I'm doing the contract management for critical items, my approach is different. When I'm doing contract management for leverage item, my approach, my strategy is different. For routine items, which could be catalog items, my approach is different. For bottlenecks, certainly is going to be much different. So in short, you can't have one solution for all, guys. I've learned this technique, I learned the strategy. but the strategy will vary depending on what type of supplier it is, what type of relationship you have with the supplier, what type of item it is a high value item, low value item, low risk item. So based on that, your contract management will work on. Now the next thing comes is, I've decided the strategy depending on the 2x2 matrix, and based on that, based on the strategy, I'll develop my own tactics. The next comes is to define the risk. The risks are very important to me to define upfront. I mean, there's hardly any contract I come across where there's no risk. Risk is always there. Even a small contract or a high value contract, the risk is always there. The question is, are you able to accept it upfront? If you're accepting upfront, you're documenting it, and you're taking care that this risk does not happen. So risk has to be identified upfront at the time of appraising a supplier, at the time of shortlisting suppliers. So even when you're shortlisting suppliers, you see, guys, okay, this supplier is wonderful, well known, internationally known, but still there could be potential risk around. One guy is well known for the qualities, one guy is very well known for the delivery. So there might be some risk X and Y. So this is where we do it. Risk can relate to schedule. That's the first thing, the delivery part. It can relate to cost, and it can relate to quality. So these are broad three headings around where the risk could be spelled out. Next comes the schedule. How do we schedule the risk? So focus on the risk relating to the schedule, the delivery parts. As we said in the beginning, one of the chart, you focus on the activity in the critical part. The critical path, which we saw in one of the slides, was having a 10 weeks. So that critical path, if I can, there's no slack in that. So if I can cut down from 10 to 9, great. If not, I have to be very vigilant. The 10 weeks don't become 11 weeks. So you have to define the activities, which are the ones falling into the critical path, and then be careful about them. That's what I would call it. Now, when it comes to the delivery risk or schedule risk around the possible causes, you need to know around incomplete and incorrect specs. You wrote down the spec, and now the supplier is struggling with it to understand. The back and forth, the correspondence is going on. That could affect the delivery schedule risk. Required inputs are late. We were supposed to give them some data. They're not coming up. Our supplier was supposed to buy from tier 2, tier 3 company. The material is not coming. So there could be different inputs which could delay the whole process. Official bureaucracies, poor communications, supplier does not have sufficient resources around. There could be production problem, could due to labor or due to electricity, whatever reasons could be. Due to earthquake, with tsunamis or whatever we may call. And then there could be mistakes also. Quality problems, shipment problems. So all these could lead to delays as well. Next comes the risk, which is the cost risk around. When cost is a high priority, or if the item is of a very high expenditure, it's coming as an A item in my category. So then a contract has been made on a cost plus reimbursable basis. So that means this is becoming a risk for me. And the possible causes, again, incorrect specs, incomplete specs. I think this you will find very common in case of manufacturing. Yes, they have an engineering drawing. But those who are not having this and they are buying on a generic dimension or generic of performance-based specs around, sometimes the specifications are not very clear. So there could be communication gap, there's understanding gap between the buyer and the seller. Supplier cost increases up, adverse movement in the exchange rates, and the next inflation could happen in a big way, increase in custom duties, taxes, all these could affect the cost part. Next comes the quality risk. Around quality is again high priority areas. Supplier has not been used before, supplier is using new suppliers, but the cause for this could be the damages happen in the transit, incomplete specs. So you will find this wording coming in all the risk around, incomplete, incorrect specs around. Then the next one is the commercial and other risk around. Commercial could be in the terms, the lack of responsiveness, change of supplier ownership, the company has been taken over by somebody, there's a strike, there's a protest. So as you can see in the pictorial part, so there could be many other causes around. So you need to define all this information into the contract risk register. That's what we call risk. Now coming back, once you design the contract risk register, the next comes measuring the performance part. Obviously, if you're not able to measure the contract performance, you're not able to define, is the supplier doing a good job or a bad job? If you don't measure it, you can't manage it honestly. That means next time if I have to hire the same supplier, I have no data with me. I never measured the performance of this guy. So that means you need to have the performance indicators. Against those performance indicators, you need to measure how is this guy behaving in regard to the price rise up and down, in regard to the delay. The delivery was supposed to happen in 2 weeks, it happened in 4 weeks. Qualities, I will look into all aspects, whether they were supposed to give us 20 pieces, the guy gave me 15 pieces. Some pieces came, they were damaged. So all that performance part has to be measured. So if you have not defined the performance indicators, you have nothing to compare with. So you need to measure it. So the issues, as we said, time, cost, qualities. Now the integrated approach is the key question in the case of variance. What caused the variance? I placed the order for 75 pieces, but later on I suddenly get a request from sales office, oh guys, we're not going to sell this one. Then I tell my seller, my supplier, can you cut down the numbers? So that might have caused the variance. But what is the impact of that around? The supplier has given me the pricing for a batch of X item. And now I've cut down the quantity. So will that price be relevant? There could be impact on the price itself. Then what impact, if any, will the variance have around? What corrective action has to be taken around? What results are anticipated around? So top down is, again, you could have totally milestone monitoring, matching with each and every monitoring. You do it on a this one basis. Otherwise, you cut short sometime with 50-50 rules, 100% rules. Contract administration and review. So now here the term is coming again, contract administration. So this is coming purely post-award. In a contract management, I'll do more holistic approach. So when I say contract management, if I'm dealing with the contract management, I will be putting my fingers when the contract is being signed. I'll be part of it. What details are going into the contract management? So at that stage, I will look into it. So it is not my boundary starts only after the contract is started. No, I'll be stepping into that when the contract is being signed. I'll be part of the negotiation team in that stage also. Then ensure later on when it falls into my lap, I take care for it. So contract management is a more holistic picture. Administration is, as the name indicates, very bureaucratic term, ensuring the compliance. I will tell to the supplier that, guys, as per my contract, there are 20 milestones. Have you done this? Have you done this? If not, as required, I may put some penalty. But in the case of contract management, I go much bigger. It's a more holistic approach. Now, contract administration ongoing, documentation management, monitoring the resource levels and the cost, expediting it, how frequent it is, the environments and environments. I think one has to expedite also. I'm sure you must have come across. Even if you're given the date, but then you have to start telling the supplier well in advance, my due date is coming. Can you expedite it? Can you give 1 day before? So there comes the variation, the change controls. I think we discussed already, so I can skip this. Now these are necessary, as we discussed earlier. The variations are bound to happen, sometimes for logical reasons, sometimes because of your not drafting the contract properly around. So you have to see make sure the value of the change is higher than the cost of making it. Now when we are making a request for a change, I think one must put down in writing a clear description of the change, an explanation why it is needed, the scope and the specs of the change around, the supplier offers, including a time schedule, because the supplier will, you need to get the time schedule as well. You can't say, guys, make this change, make that change, and then later on everything is delayed, and then you start blaming a supplier. So you have to really get around, guys, okay, I'm making this change, what are the impact of this on the delivery? So do get in writing itself, so it is get documented. Any risk associated with the challenge change. Risk is obviously the cost is going to go up or could go down depending on what type of risk it is. Assess the impact of multiple changes very carefully. Communicate all changes clearly to all involved. So those who are involved in the chain, all who are affected, the stakeholders, person should be clear that this change has happened due to so and so, the price is so and so. So that has to be reflected. Now when it comes to the payments part, invoice is in accordance with the contract. Because the contract when it was signed, let's say 6 months back, and in the 6th month, you have accepted verbally with many things with the supplier, but those have not been incorporated in the contract. It's going to be difficult. So your contract should always go with changes whenever you're making changes around. Otherwise, those who are following ERP, I think making a payment is becoming a complex, difficult. Because sometimes in most of the ERP, we give a tolerance of 5% or 10%. But if it is exceeding more than that, and you have not documented the revised contract, it could have difficulty. Now coming back, administration at and beyond the contract completion. The contract completion is done. Sign the completion certificate. Somebody has to sign. The contract is completed. Check and return any bonds or guarantee. You might be keeping some bonds or guarantees around, so you have to check that and give it back. Make the final payments. And the next is continuing keeping records around. Once the warranty period has expired, release retention money and return the bonds and guarantees around. So keep in mind that this has to be returned. Contract reviews. For each problem that has occurred, find out what went wrong. Because we have to learn from our past things around. So somebody has to write down, guys, in this case, what went wrong? What are the impact on the contracts? Why did it go wrong? So we basically, if we want to learn the lesson from our past, we need to document. Could the same problem occur again? Because if you want to go back to the same supplier and the same thing you want to repeat, I think it's a waste of time and resources. If it could, how serious could it be? How could the problem be prevented? So this is what the lesson has to be learned from the past. So basically the learning, the writing down the document, guys, what lesson I learned from this contract? How could I avoid this changes happening around? Managing the relationship. Things to keep in mind is different types of contract require different contract managers. I think this is what we said in the beginning. If you're looking for a partnership contract, collaborative contract, you want to work together as a partner, or if you want to work in an arm's length relationship, two require different time. As we said in the beginning also, arm's length will require a person who is very good on the legal side, the contract law. While the cooperative relationship, it has to be a person who is a people person, who is a people manager. So when it comes to the cooperative relationship, and this one is very relevant if I go back to the 2x2 matrix, particularly when the items are very bottleneck items, or items are very strategic and critical items. That's a place we want to build and maintain a cooperative relationship. I'm working in a company and there are only 1 or 2 suppliers. My approach of managing the contract and at the end of the day manage the relationship going to be very different than the one where I've got tons of suppliers. I can change the supplier anytime without affecting my delivery. So my approach is different. So my contract management style is different. So this is what it was. So coming back to the management, in cooperative, you will often be aware of the problem at an early stage. Partnership should have an agreed way of dealing with the problems. Problems should be resolved at the lowest possible level. It should not be escalated. Because the moment you start escalating every time problem to the top, it becomes a pain, and then later on you say, guys, it's a pain point, let's try to get rid of it. Change the partner, change the supplier. Now the techniques which are there, obviously, first thing is identify the issues, the problems, clarify the problem with all the parties involved, develop a problem statement, determine the appropriate level of decision making, agree to a time limit, use one or more problem solving technique. Is this problem resolved? That's the way we do. If not, then you go back again to the step 3, that's it goes on. Now some of the techniques which we use very often is value analysis, value engineering, cause and effect diagrams, force field, flow charting, SWOT, brainstorming. I mean, brainstorming, we all know around, guys, okay, we have a problem, we have a cross-functional team, we have the supplier team, sit together, brainstorm, find a solution. But sometimes the technique like value analysis, value engineering goes a long way. The value analysis could be that finding the way it is designed, the way it is made, and I'm changing it because this is happening because of this. My dimensions are made so precise, while I don't need that much precise. I've used specific material which is scarce. Can I use some substitutes around? So those value analysis could go a long way. I have seen in my life, whenever I used to get, we are normally the interface between the supplier and the designer. The supplier tells us ideas arise. If you want to cut down your risk, go make this change around, go do this change around, change the material, change the dimension. And if it is accepted by the design people, go for it. But the next could be at the design stages. The person who has designed at the drawing board stage, the drawing is so faulty, it leads into risk and risk all the time. So somebody could do it much better job on that stage itself. Then we also look at it happening, the cause and effect. Well, this is happening. Why it is happening? We review it and then try to do it. SWOT, flow charting, I think you all know well. Handling claims and disputes. So in the contract management, this is part of it. There are unforeseen costs, disputes over the contract clauses. Normally the clause which is very painful is the liability clause. Liquidated damages clause. They say, guys, oh, this is a liquidated damage, but I never accepted this. The 2% you're charging per week, I don't have margin, my currency has changed, you have disputes on that. Liabilities clause around, you say, guys, because of you, my image has spoiled, my company image has gone down, my business is lost, and then you come up with a big figure of this claims around, and that's where the dispute comes. Dispute or what is included in the price. We write down the price is so and so. We don't mention even this is exclusive of tax or exclusive of this. So I would say put down the footnote, the price does not include this, this, this. If currency changes, this price will be changed. If this happens, this will be changed. So those parameters, if it is not spelled it out and you assume that other person knows it, I think is a mistaken approach around. So try to put down, try to document each and every parameter which could affect the price. And even if there are taxes separate, then do mention this price is exclusive of taxes. Any taxes applicable will be applied on this. The breach of the contract. There's a breach. Whatever was spelled out, the guy is not doing as per that. There's a breach. But then for each breach, there's a remedy also. So breach is not without a remedy, but if those breach could be spelled out, if this happens, this is the remedy I'm going to follow. So I think your life will be easier. You will have less hiring of the lawyers because then you say, guys, this is what I want. In case of problem, you can either resolve or issue amicably or bring a third party for arbitration or litigation. So one path is going for litigation, which may be economical per se, but it's a long cycle. It can be delayed for years and years. Arbitration could be faster, it could be costlier, but the results are there. So most of the MNCs, they go for the arbitration. Whenever you ask any MNCs, wherever I go and work with them, I ask them, what is your applicable law? I mean, they have to put down some applicable law, but then the arbitrations, they go with a different approach. Next comes, sometimes you get fed up. The contract is frustrated. There are two ways to terminate. So one is the job has been done fully, then you say, guys, if the supplier performance is unacceptable, you're given the time, but again, there's no improvements. And the buyer's needs have substantially changed also. We have placed the order, but now our requirements have changed enormously. So in all those cases, either from our side, we want to terminate. Second, it could also be happening from the performance side. The supplier is unacceptable. You decided to supply based on selection, based on appraisal, but then later on you found this guy does not meet your expectation, too many changes are there. So both situations, there's a contract termination. So contract termination leads to the breach, but breach has got its own remedies around. Then comes operational contract. Now so far we're talking in the project stage, but in the case of operational contract, which are day-to-day production items, few changes may be there around in terms of planning the risk, managing the risk. Because if I'm running a production plant, assembly plant, I'm working on it just in time. My parts are not coming. I'm falling just in time, like in the Japan, 2 hours, 3 hours. If part doesn't come in, my assembly line comes to an halt. So there the approach could change around. So there has to be a different ways to manage the contract, particularly when I'm working in assembly line, production line, where any delay, any cost increase could affect my production line. So the risks again are relatively more than the other ones around under the project procurement. So you need to do the line of balance, guys, okay? It's a technique for planning it, monitoring it, and managing the particular project and replicating production line. So you try to replicate the production line process so there's a proper balance around. Now when it comes to the balancing, the time required, if I want to do the production schedule, how much time it will take. So the time required is how much is the lag, how much is my pacer plus number plus lead time. You add them up, so mathematically you work it out. What are the time required to complete the value? Now coming back to the, again, operational strategies around, I think we discussed in the 2x2 matrix, the routine items, leverage items, the bottleneck items, and the critical items. So you need a different approach for all four. The next comes the managing the service level. Is nothing but again you're defining the service level. Okay guys, I may allow you 4%, 5% variation in the quantity. Somebody says 0. I want this, mean this. Even if it's a 1 piece less, I'm going to reject it. So there is a service level defined around. Price increase will not happen more than 4 or 5%. But if it is exceeding more than that, sorry guys, we can't. There is a service level on quality, service level on performance, service level on quality, everything around. So once the deviations are identified, action needs to be taken. Next comes contract renewal versus switching. One is that I'm trying to renew the contract because I got a request for another item. Initially, I gave a contract for 10,000 tires, and then I find, guys, I need 20,000 more. My performance is very good. I give to the same supplier. Guys, okay, go ahead, do it. Versus switching. So one, I can renew it. It saves my time, saves my effort. Supplier knows my expectations. Versus switching to a new supplier. So sometime I have to switch to a new supplier because the type of, let's say if I'm working in an automobile company, I'm getting the headlamps, which are normal halogen lamps, but now I feel the market is only looking for LED lamps. I would like to switch over the supplier. I would like to switch over the supplier for many other reasons as well. supplier is not performing well to my expectation. So all these parts are contract management. I've given a contract for a year, but then after a month I find the market has changed, my product I need to improve on. So I may change the contract. Switch to a new supplier if no option to renew existing, and particularly if existing is unacceptable because of performance. Another could be because of maybe the technology changes happen around. In both situations, you may like to switch it. But you have to make sure that you revise the specification to reflect the changes in needs. So whatever changes you want to do around, change it, ensure the flexibility to accommodate any future needs. Obviously, we all need some flexibilities around, but then that should be incorporated in the contract. Guys, I'm giving you contract, but my quantity can change by plus 25% or minus 25% because the demand is changing every week. Incorporates the learning from the past contracts. Ensure that the specs has not been written down on a particular supplier. We are not cut and paste specification of a particular supplier. Now you're giving a contract to another one, but you're taken the specs from the previous supplier. Basically, you're taken the cut and paste. Contract renewals versus switching, what could happen around. So this is what. But lastly, I would like to touch on this is the key aspects of the proactive contract. As I said in the beginning, I just want to finish with this, that contract management should not be looked as just a reactive function, guys. Okay, I have to do this and this. In a proactive means you have to do clear contract specs. Read it yourself again. Contract specs are clear or not. All the stakeholders' needs have been acknowledged. Performance is measured against the KPIs, or KPI must be there for each contract. Relationship, 99%, we want to have collaborative relationship. Continuous improvements. So that's another one. It does not mean the guy has done a wonderful job, but there's a scope for improvement. So go on looking at it either through value analysis, through value engineering, or through the processes. Whatever improvements you can bring around in your processes, design, whatever you can think of, it has to be an ongoing activities around. And payment should be linked with performance. Sometimes you give a fixed price or cost reimbursable. I think it should be linked with performance. If performance is done by this date, yes, I give you full price. If it's delayed by 1 week, I'm going to deduct 5%. So there has to be a pressure on the supplier to do this. So in short, what I'm trying to convey is all contract management, you need a very holistic approach to go through this. Well, friends, with this, I want to thank you all for your patient hearing.